This is Eating Crow with Pete Durand.
Hey folks, welcome to another excellent edition of the Eating Crow podcast. I'm honored to have, by the way, another fine-looking bald gentleman on the program, Rich Font. Rich, welcome.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate this. It's good to be here.
So Rich has got a very fascinating background, both in the military and he's an entrepreneur. He's kicked off his own business. He's a family guy. He's also a fitness guy, so close to my own heart. I haven't been able to convince my wife to let me tat up yet, so we're going to talk to Rich about how I can convince her to do that. My kids are all for it, by the way. My kids are like, Dad, you could pull a sleeve off. My wife's like, no,
it's more than socially accepted now. It's almost like a thing.
It is. It is. So I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to have her listen to this podcast.
Okay. All right.
That's the plan.
Sounds good, man.
So, Rich, tell us today, what you're doing with, your own business as a videographer and a vlogger at Rich Font, as a business. Tell us where that all kind of started.
Yeah. So, it actually started about 3 years ago. I was working my 9 to 5, right? I don't want to go back too far. We'll talk about we'll go back to the military part, but
yeah,
I was working the 9 to 5. I was in ops management. I was in a warehouse environment. And although I loved management, right, I learned a lot about myself and about managing other people. I didn't have that. I wasn't getting that full fulfillment that was in me, right? When you feel that there's something in you, is that you're not being fulfilled in what you're doing in regards to the profession. I wasn't quite feeling that. I got to a point where I was making decent money. I was enjoying myself, but I didn't feel fulfilled. And maybe I was just always that burning passion that was always in me. Right. Sure. So what happened was I'll kind of give you the long story short, right? Like we can go into some more details as we elaborate a little later. But so what happened is that I had some friends that were videographers, and I was always drawn to storytelling. Obviously by just watching movies, right? Never really picked up a camera, never really did much of that. I was drawn into just, obviously watching a lot of just great movies and looking at things very differently. Obviously, I look at them a lot differently now, but
sure.
So what happened was I decided to pick up a camera, right? Bought an entry level. For me, it was a $500 Panasonic Lumix G7, right? It was the entry level camera. And I decided I wanted to film my daughter at a coffee shop, which was, what's the coffee shop out there in Raleigh that a lot of people go to? It's a big meeting spot. Can't get it off the top of my tongue, but so we went in there and I filmed a little sequence, and I learned a lot within that, right? Obviously by just kind of doing some studying on YouTube and trying to just looking at some different things. And as I was going through the process of figuring out how to maybe get certain shots and then, take that coffee shop experience and me just filming it, documenting it, taking it into an editing platform, I was like, okay, this is something that I really feel like that I can do. And even at the beginning stages of it, I was kind of just trying it out, right? I went, full in to where I was filming clips, right? And I was taking those clips, understanding how to manage that, putting it to editing software, and then creating a video, right? So then obviously my family, my daughter got real happy about it. But then as I started to dive deeper into into more storytelling, right? I was trying to understand how can I find myself within this, right? And then over the long term, I was able to kind of really develop a style and definitely a passion to where I am today in this industry and in this niche.
If you can't pursue something you really enjoy, you feel like you're going to work every day.
Yeah.
Right. You don't feel like you're going to work every day, do you?
No, not at all. I was just having this conversation with my wife about it too, is that, you can't come over here. Sorry. No. Sorry, my wife is talking real quick. Yeah, you can come. You can crawl though. I'm in the bedroom. My wife's like, "Can I crawl over there and get something?" So back to what I was saying. So what I was getting to is that I was just having this conversation with my wife, basically saying like, well, if I'm making $3,000 a month, $5,000 a month, or $10,000 a month, right? Everybody wants to make more money. At least I'd like to hope everybody wants to make more money.
Sure.
But like, for example, there's times that I'm making $3,000 a month as a freelance videographer, right? But I told her, I said, I'm actually enjoying myself, right? Sure. Most recently, I've been doing a lot of projects filming for, I can't name the client, but it's been a lot of storytelling on the farms, local farms, big farmers, local farmers, and a lot of like agriculture type stuff.
Sure.
And it's hot. I'm sweating. There's gnats around me, but I get the chills when I'm in that heat.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm filming, like I'm trying to find the spot to film the farmer. Right. I'm trying to make him feel comfortable. And as he's talking, I'm taking notes to try and understand what are the best shots are going to drive this story.
Sure.
A drone shot, a shot of him getting on the tractor, a shot of him with out on the farm with the vegetables or with the cattle or whatever it may be. But it's the certain shots that I get, and it's the certain things that I hear, and I feel like it's just the relationship. I've really, over the past 3 years, obviously the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations through that. But even now to this day, like present day in the past couple of weeks, like there's just certain moments that happen, whether from filming or in the edit, that I'm just like, this is it. Like I knew that this was what I was meant to do. Never knew it. Never knew that that I could even build this skill set, but it happened.
It's interesting. Just me doing this podcast, I've experienced, maybe not at the same level, but I'm sure you went through this, and we'll talk about it. When you recognize this is something you wanted to try, it's a big leap as a husband and a father to say, I'm going to go do this. I've never done it before. Right. So when I started looking at, and by the way, I've had a lot of people say, Pete, you should be doing a podcast. And I'm like, well, that means I gotta take more of my nights and weekends, and I do that already. But I was very curious about it. So here I figured out how to do it. And oddly enough, I'm editing video, I'm editing audio. And that to me it's kind of like, I actually enjoy that part of it. It's part of the process, but this is my favorite part, right? I get off these calls and I say to my family, like, you wouldn't believe this guy or this woman who did this, right? And she's passionate about it.
Yep.
Every one of my podcasts, I learned something tremendous about another human being.
Yeah.
And it's bettering me. Hopefully it's bettering our listeners. And you said an interesting comment. I've produced probably 500 different videos, exercise videos, motivational videos, commercials, whatever. I'm like you. Now that I have really smart video and audio people around me for 5 years, really smart people, I have a hard time watching a movie without thinking, how did they film that? Or I wonder where they had that camera angle. That lighting doesn't seem right. Or that audio is amazing. And my wife's looking at me like, why don't you just enjoy the movie?
Yeah.
And it's to you, it's you're fascinated by it, and now you're doing it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to touch on that as just to backtrack that transition.
Yeah.
From being in that ops management position to really jumping into this niche, right? Jumping into this passion. So, I would say about 5 or 6 months when I was still in the 9 to 5, I was shooting, I was editing, doing free projects for some fitness guys, and kind of just really getting my feet wet, right? And not even really building the portfolio, just getting in and building the skill set. And then, fast forwarding, it got to that point. Yeah, I got 2 kids. My daughter's 18 now. My son is 11. I've been married for 11, 12 years. So when that transition happened, my wife was like, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, we have a family. Like, you got a good job, benefits and stuff like that. And I said, listen, if I the one thing that's killing me is regret. I cannot live with regret.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there is a thing with regret, but then there is a thing of building a skill set that you get paid for.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I told my wife, I said, listen, there is no plan B. I have to make this happen. And she was like, Rich, you're crazy. I'm not sure about it. I said, listen, I got to do it. Right. So it was that thing to where I jumped in, I built some really good relationships. What I mean relationships is it was with other videographers, other small little video production companies, right? To where they saw what I was doing. I wasn't trying to be somebody else. There's so many great filmmakers out there. There's so many filmmakers that I know, and so many great video production companies. And there's so many pieces of great content.
Yeah.
So now in the space that we live in is that you have to, in order to really, successful is a thing that everybody has their own definition. But for me as a freelance videographer, filmmaker, whatever you want to call it, I had to develop my own style. Mm-hmm. So, and what I mean by that is that the way that I talk, the way that I am, and how that transpires into my videography, how I shoot, the music that I have. Like, Yeah, it's all different types of, depending on what you're shooting, if it's for an interview or whether if it's sports or whatever it is different styles of content.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like my personality really had to come out on how I shoot and
Mm-hmm.
how I do things, because it is very relational, right? People will get to know you by your style, right?
Yeah.
So that was a great thing for me to really understand throughout the years. As I've developed as a human being, I've developed also too as a videographer. So there was one of those things. So I don't want to get too sidetracked, but that transition, there was some setback. There was a lot of anxiety. There was fear, all the emotions that kicked in. But I said, if I don't do this now, I'm going to regret it. Right. And I'll tell you, man, I have not looked back. Like, it's been very fruitful. There's been some peaks and some valleys, but it's been fruitful. And going back to like me defining success is that I get to always be a student of the game in this career, and I get to control my own time, and just touching on time too. Time is something that we all have the same amount of time, but as I look back into kind of getting up and essentially doing the same thing every day and getting home around the same thing every day, is that like, it is not like that at all. As an entrepreneur and in this space, there's times that I'm up editing late hours in the night, and then I love to do my work from 5 a.m. to like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
Whether if it's editing, because there's times I'm shooting a lot and then I have to go back and do editing. So it's like, I control my time. If I'm gone for a couple of days and I don't want to shoot or edit, I know when I get back that it's literally grind time.
It's
like
go time.
Literally 10 to 12 hour days that I'm doing what I got to do. And then obviously sometimes those cold days and those hot days that you're shooting and stuff, like, it just doesn't matter. Like, I just love it. I love it. It's who I am now. So,
when you find people, I did a podcast yesterday, and we're very kindred spirits in our enthusiasm for what we do. Yeah. And when you talk to people that are passionate about what they do, they can talk about it all day. Even the rough stuff, even like you said, grinding out a 12-hour editing day, that could drain people. For you, it's part of, like I said, it's part of the creative process.
Yeah.
I was taking some notes. I'm learning there are points in these podcasts where I have to write something down because it was so good. The title of this podcast, you said it, is going to be "There Was No Plan B." That's the title of this podcast.
I love that. So
when I make the thumbnail and I put it out and I promote this, it's going to be Eating Crow with Rich Font. There is no plan B. It's total 100% commitment to what you're doing.
Yeah.
And kudos to your wife and your kids. I did the same thing. How old was I? I was probably 40. 3 kids getting ready to go to college.
Yeah.
Had a pretty nice paying job. Quit my job, sat down at the kitchen table, and started writing on a software fitness company from scratch. Took on $200,000 or $300,000, $200,000 or $300,000 in credit card debt, and there were some good days and bad days, and there were a lot of both. But the good days are really good, and even the bad days. To your point, I said that there is no plan B. This has to work, and it worked for a long time. And then I got to the point where the business changed and needed to go a different direction where my passion wasn't. Right? It became a business.
Yeah.
It didn't become a passion.
Yeah.
And then I shifted into something I'm doing now. And you have to, those are deep searching moments.
It really is. Yeah. I still can honestly say there are times that I still have the 9-to-5 mindset. Doesn't make it bad, but I still have it. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that I guess it's more of sometimes me being hard on myself, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the military has taught me a lot. In condition. The military just conditions you.
Sure.
So gratefully, I've been conditioned really good. So that helps a lot, but in the same sense is that I still sometimes have that mindset, and I still I'm human. I'm lazy by default, right? Like, I love sitting on the couch. Yeah. Now that we're home, I walk by the couch and see my wife and see the kids on there. And I'm just like, man, I just want to jump on there and just kind of watch a movie and chill out. But like, I know that I have to always work on my mindset every day. And really what that is just that shift. Mm-hmm. It's that initial shift. I'm thinking about something, stop, move on. Like, I got to think about this. What do my edits look like? What am I filming tomorrow? And that ultimately gets me back in the seat of thinking about how do I plan for my next day? You know what I mean? Like, I am so regimented when it comes to before I shoot that it's like, I already play it in my head, even though I don't exactly see it. I have my guide. I have who I'm interviewing. I know my B-roll. I know what drone shots. I've kind of looked at the place online. Even though I don't know exactly what's going to happen, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Sure.
And I just want to touch on something before I forget in regards to being a videographer, is that filming and editing is just a quarter or maybe even half of what you do, right? Like, being that I'm working with people, I have to develop a relationship when I'm on set. It's like I was telling my buddy, I was like, I know when I got to step in and take charge. I know when I have to kind of shut up, to be honest with you. I know when I just got to just not say anything. And I know, like, in prime example, there was a gentleman that I was working with, and he wanted to see every shot. It was a virtual fashion show, right? And he wanted to see every single shot.
Yeah.
And hear it from the lady that was emceeing, the models coming down, and he wanted to hear it every single time. And it was like 20 people that were coming through. And I was getting a little irritated, and it brought me to the thought of, you hear sometimes a lot of people say, man, I can't work with this person. Can't work in this environment. Can't do that. No, you can. What you have to do is you have to change your mindset, right? Like, you can work with anybody you want. You have to adjust. I always find myself adjusting and just being a chameleon in so many, and being adaptable in so many situations to where, like, I have to be the one that has to be like, I will never be on a shoot, and I'll leave you with this. There'll never be a client or anybody that I'm working with. They will never know how I feel. I will always adjust to make the situation and the project right.
So you just ate a plate of crow right there, right? And it's
what it was.
Even in my episode 0, I talk about that fact where I may enter a situation with a clear plan of how I'm going to do this, until another person with a different set of expectations and perspectives and background and feelings and thoughts enters into that discussion. And I realize, yeah, my opinion might not really matter here. Ultimately, you've got to get the shot, get the client happy, and that changes how you communicate. So I think that could go so far in every discussion we're having politically, racially, you name it, any discussion we're having in our country, people forget there are two people in that discussion.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, pick a side or say who's right and wrong, but boy, we could have a lot more positive discussions about understanding where people are coming from and saying, you know what, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Now I understand where you're coming from. I may disagree, but I get it. Right. And that creates just a whole different environment. There's something else that I think is interesting when you left your operations job to become a video, basically an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Your kids are now exposed to what you're doing, and they see you in your working environment and happy. They didn't get to see that when you went to the ops job.
No, not at all.
So their perspective of the world changes dramatically when they see you taking a risk and being who you need to be and want to be. It opens up their world, so they don't get out and be programmed that I got to go do a 95. I got to do it. And by the way, there are people, I have a lot of friends that look at me and say, wow, you've traveled all over the world. You've done all these different things. And I've said, well, let's talk about it. I've carried a lot of stress along the way. I've missed a lot of events. You worked a really great job that you were satisfied with. You were home every night, didn't miss anything. You knew what your income was going to be for the next 30 years. So your stress level was down here.
Yep.
And for some people, that is where they want to be, and they have much more satisfaction sometimes than other people. They were not striving for something. They were very satisfied and lived in the world they were in. And by the way, I don't know that you and I could do that, but for other people, I respect the fact that, man, they just kept it focused. They just kept it locked down.
Yeah, and that doesn't make it wrong for anything,
Not at
right?
all.
We just have a different ambition. We have it. I mean, the first word that popped in my head was agenda, but yeah, I do have an agenda, right? I want to be in my own, I want to be one of the best in my space. I want to work with some of the best in my space, right? I'm always studying other videographers out there, and it's easy to get, there was a time to where, obviously living on Instagram, seeing a lot of great content, right? I was just like, the questions were always popping up. I was consuming so much that I forgot to really figure out what my style is and focus more on my style. I was just like, man, am I even good enough for this? Like, even after making people cry, even after creating content that made people cry, I always felt like I wanted to create something so emotional that made somebody cry, and it happened. And I still questioned it, right? I still questioned. People said, you made you've made this, you've never, you never portrayed my business or my brand in a way that I thought that could be possible. I'm like, wow, like that's amazing, right? Like all this great feedback, it's still questioning. Questioning, am I good enough?
And then we all do it every day. I mean, even starting a podcast, I thought, man, there's a million podcasts out there. Why is mine going to be any different or any better? and the basic message is just get started. My first one was rough.
Yeah.
I didn't even go to the places I wanted to go, and I got done and I thought, well, that could be better.
Yeah.
And the next two were better, not because of me. The guests were so good. I mean, I wrote down another headline, by the way. I have an agenda. That's the sub headline.
There you go. You got options now.
So there's so much richness in, well, no pun intended. So we mentioned before we started recording, Rich, you had two kind of key points in your life.
Yeah.
Where you had to rethink your perspective, eat some crow, and you right away you said, I've got two.
Yep.
Let's talk about what those two are.
Yeah. So the first one is I was around maybe, 20, 21. This is before I went to the military. This was that when it happened.
Okay.
I was living in Virginia Beach with my sister working, doing car detail. I was actually one of the car detailers at, I think it was an Infinity dealership. Right.
Okay.
And then I was just like, man, I'm just out here, just partying, just being young with no real direction, working, living with my sister. And I was just like, something has to happen. So I had, I speak to my dad all the time, did 27 years in the Army, retired as a sergeant major. And now he just can't stop. He's teaching ROTC at a high school in Florida, right? My dad went to Ranger School when I was born. He's an old school hard charger, but he never forced me. Never was like, you have to do this. You got to do this. I just seen it. I just seen him every day in uniform. He was a drill sergeant. Always seen him in uniform. And I'll go to what I'm going to go into, but I love talking about my dad because he's like, I idolize him. So
what a blessing that is.
Yeah. And I had the opportunity to actually work with him in a reserve unit, in his unit. So then we would go out and they'd be like, man, you're Font's dad. Like, man, you know that your dad, like I hear stories of my dad taking people homeless out of their cars and helping them get in the military and mentor them and transfer them to ultimately become a soldier. So it's just truly amazing. But it was that moment where I had a conversation with my dad and he was like, this is the moment. He's like, now you've seen me. I've talked to you about it. And like, I knew going into it that it's start to finish. In the military, there is no, you can quit anything you want, but there is no quitting. There is no, I walk out of the job. It just doesn't work like that. It literally doesn't work like that, right? You have to, there's a transitional time frame. So I knew going into this what I wanted to do. My dad was infantry. I said, okay, I'm going to go infantry, right? So ultimately, it was one of those things to where I'm sitting, having a conversation with my dad, and I'm like, all right, this is going to happen, right? So then, went to the process of going to the recruiters and talking to MEPS, and then from there, the rest is history, right? It was Fort Benning, and I did 16 weeks in Fort Benning for infantry training, and then from there went into airborne school, which is 2 weeks training, and then from there went to my first primary duty station, which was Fort Bragg, 82nd Airborne, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, you were detailing cars, and because of the example your dad set, but didn't force on you, you came to your own decision. Which, by the way, brilliant parenting. That's brilliant parenting.
Yeah. Now I see it as a dad. I'm like,
we look back and we go, Dad had it right. Yeah.
It was never as hardcore as my dad was. He was never hardcore in the house. Never.
My dad was a three-time state champion, lost one wrestling match in high school.
Really?
One. And it was when my mom, who was his girlfriend at the time, wasn't there.
Wow.
So he was, and by the way, born and raised in a farm.
Yeah.
Working his tail off. The work ethic, he was able to translate down to us a lot by example, but also by nudging us, like get up and go do that. No excuses. Yeah. Never forced the wrestling thing on any one of my brothers and I. We played basketball, football, soccer, baseball, track, whatever. Never forced it. But my dad is 5'6", 5'7". I was 6'1". My wife and kids will tell you I'm now 6 feet. I've shrunk.
Yeah.
But up until he was probably 65, 70 years old, he could put me on my back.
Wow.
And he wrestled at 145. right? He probably weighs 160, I weigh 210. He could probably still put me on my back.
Wow.
So, but he would never, he's the most peaceful, like your dad. I could do a whole podcast. I've rarely met a human being. I have never heard a single person in my entire life say a negative thing about my father.
Wow.
And that's not because he's a softie. He's just one of those people. He's wired to do the right thing every flipping time.
Yep.
And you have to ultimately respect that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's of course. So for me, I'd like to think that I got more of my mom, but here's the thing. I know who I am and I know who I'm not. I know what I struggle with and I know where my opportunities are.
Sure.
You know what I mean? As a dad, as a human, as a professional, it just doesn't make a difference. So like, I like to think I got a lot more opportunities than so, right? Like, and that's fine. Cause I know, like I said, I know who I am and, you know, not to get too much into it, but then, you know, it was just one of those things. So going into the second thing, not to veer off too much, that was the ops management transitioning into full-time videography, right? And I'll kind of dip a little bit more into that. So what was going on, I had some buddies that have a successful business in New Jersey. And the thought of me going full-time into this, and this was really good. So I'll kind of shrink it up a little bit. But I didn't grow up with these guys, but I went to high school with these guys. Successful business they have in New Jersey. And they saw what I was doing, and my buddy was like, "Rich, we should just start a media company, right? Like we'll kind of put a small fund into it, and we'll help you run it. But ultimately, like you got to be out there trying to get business and doing videos and really kind of helping with the brand of the company and stuff like that." So really, long story short, we did it and what that entailed is me going up to New Jersey for like a month at a time as a certain extent, right? I go for like 3 weeks, come back for a week, go for a month. So like after that transition, that's what I was doing. So, and it got to the point where these guys, I was in their office, kind of like we had our meetings and we were doing this thing, but I saw this to where I had the expectation that they were going to maybe put more time into us doing this together. And that didn't happen.
Of course not.
Right. So when I saw that, the immediate emotional was in, but like I knew these guys. So I knew that I could have those hard conversations, but still be mindful that they were running a business, a very successful business. So ultimately it got to the point to where it got dissolved. It didn't ruin the relationship, but it got dissolved. And that really took me back into coming back to North Carolina and being like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Right. Like, yeah, I've developed a pretty good portfolio of what I was shooting, these extravagant houses showcasing a lot of the features that these smart home technologies and what they did. I was doing a lot of really cool stuff, had some really good experience, got some better gear and just really developed more of my skill set, right? Like that's what really got out of it. But then I came back here and I was like, what do I do now? I've built some relationships, right? And that ultimately is what helped me is that there was a guy, he's been doing this full time for like 10 years. And he was like, Rich, I love what you're doing. You've been doing great. Like, I see that you're back full time and notice what you were doing. He's like, man, I'm getting really booked up and I can only take on so much. Like, would you want to take on all those extra projects that's coming on? So I was like, dude, like, you know, the stars align with that. Right. Like, and so ultimately that's where I'm at now is that there's a guy, he's dedicated to a certain client and everything else that comes in comes to me if I want to take it on. So it's been very fruitful that I've been able to position myself right to really genuinely build that relationship, right? Because he can trust me with his clients. He can trust me to go out with a small guide and scope to go out and handle business, right? And adjust as I need to. But ultimately, it was the loyalty, it was the respect, it was the camaraderie, it was all those values that I took from the military that helped me now in the space to be able to adjust and to go out in any situation and to do what I do and really make it a successful project, you know?
Another key word you touched on was trust.
Yeah.
So you and I met because I saw a LinkedIn post you had done on one of the first videos you had produced, right? You had said, I'm out there, I'm doing this.
Yep.
And for me, that sparked entrepreneur, right? I've lived it. I respect anybody doing it. So I reached out, and you and I met, had a cup of coffee, and that led to this because you're passionate. I'm like, this guy's going to be successful. I mean, you didn't state it, but I said, he doesn't have a plan B. He's all in.
Yeah.
And the way the way businesses grow is if I can refer you to a customer because I can trust you to be successful and courteous and run that project, your business will have no end. Referrals drive everything in this space.
Yeah.
And a creative piece is eye-catching. People go, who did that? Right? I want to know who did that. So, let's touch base a little bit on how you and your family have adapted to this whole new world, right? You're around more, you're working more, you got strange hours. Tell me how that's benefited your family. Is it deepened the relationships? What's that like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's been perfect when I say that, right? When I say perfect, I mean, I'm more in tune now. If I'm, and this is me kind of diving into the parent too, to where, say if I'm downstairs, I have now with COVID, everything, I kind of just propped up in my dining room there. So like so much traffic happens with my kids and coming downstairs. But
sure,
if my son come ask me, hey, you want to go play some Madden on Xbox, right? And I'm editing, I have the moment to where I'm like, I can't get that moment back. I'll stop, right? Doesn't matter what it is. I'll come back and finish it. That's the joys of what I have to do, because if it takes me, if I stop for an hour, I'll just tack that hour on, or however long it takes me to come back and do it. So when I mean it's been perfect, I mean in the sense of that it's been very fruitful, because time. Now I have time to go and watch a movie with my daughter. Now I have time and a little bit of more of an extra money to go out and take my kids to do things, right? Just got back from Myrtle Beach for 4 days. This Saturday, we're leaving for Florida. My birthday's on the 1st, so now we're going for 4 or 5 days to go and spend time with my parents, right? I've never been able to do that, to where I can just go and just do things here and there. And it's just time. I've been able to control my time more. But you still have to be careful with that too, because there's that balance to where like I have to get work done. And then, I kind of set that expectation with my family and my kids too. I sit them down when we're having dinner and I just say, listen, guys, there's times that I'm going to have to put in extra days to where, if you see me, just like my daughter said not too long ago, she's like, you're always on your computer. I'm saying, I'm really not. You just see me all the time on my computer, right? Like, I'm really not all the time. Like,
that time you looked up, I just happen to always be there, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you catch me after dinner and if it's 8 o'clock and I'm on from 8 until 1 o'clock in the morning, you're going to bed at a certain time. So yeah, you see me at that time when I'm on it. And then, but you don't see me from 5 a.m. to 10. If say she wakes up at 10, you don't see me at 5 a.m. Right? I've already knocked out 3 projects before you even woke up. You know what I mean? So I don't want to sidestep, but like, yeah, it's really been great, because let me take you back to the other ops management. I'll just touch on it. Yeah. There was another supervisor job that I was in. It was ops supervisor, but I would go in from 4 p.m. and sometimes get it home at 6 or 7. So I would get home when the kids are going to school. This was years ago. And I would always be exhausted. So I would sleep, sometimes for a couple hours. They would come home and I would just be so mentally and physically exhausted that with just a couple of conversations and that's it. But when I get home and I'm exhausted, I'm so ignited though, because I get to talk to them about the project, right? Dude, I'll be so honest with you. Like, there was a project I've been filming a lot lately, and the other guy's been editing, and it's so great to see it come together. Like, I get emotional when I watch these projects. Like, it's so amazing to see all this just come to. Oh man, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I don't know what happened. I think this thing, but so I don't want to get so sidestepped, but it's definitely been very fruitful. It's been nothing short of a blessing to spend more time and really understand the awareness of an entrepreneur, to really find balance, to not overwork, but then know that like those opportunities to where like, even if I'm working and like my family's like, you want to go to lunch? Yeah, let's go to lunch.
Yeah.
I have to do that, because I don't, there's times that I don't do it, but I have to find that balance. It's been great.
You said you're not going to get that time back, right?
Yeah.
You've set boundaries with your family that there are times when I have to work and I've got to grind it out, and they'll respect that when they see it.
Yeah.
I think it's been a challenge for many of us. We were actually just having this discussion as a company. We've been home since March. We're going to stay home through January as a business. There was kind of an unwritten rule. When you saw people leave the office, you didn't call them after that.
Yeah.
They were going home to their home life.
Yeah.
That was off limits.
Yeah.
Well, there's no boundaries anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I find myself which I like to work. I like what I do. I like what we do. But I find myself still at 8:30 at night after starting at 6 a.m. It's 15 hours into it, 14 and a half hours into it. I've got to say, we got to shut this down and go spend time with our families.
Yeah.
So you have to be cautious about it. I'm lucky. My kids are old and out of the house. So yeah. I don't have little ones around that need my attention. My wife has done an amazing job raising my kids with, I like to say, with my assistance.
Yeah, I can agree.
Yep. And we had dinner with our kids every night. She had a meal on that table every night. And when our kids were in sports, that got to be challenging because, one might be having practice till 8, but when one came home late, one of us sat with that kid and had dinner.
Yeah.
And more often than not, we were all there together. And it's amazing. You've seen this. I have a daughter and 2 sons. Any one of them can have a day where they really want to talk.
Yeah.
And then you just sit there and let them go, or just eat it up, because you just see the excitement. And they have other days where they just want to kind of eat their food and not say a lot.
Yeah.
And they're processing it. And it's an art form when you learn at different times how they're dealing with it. And if you're not present, right? If you're not present in that moment, you miss it.
Especially when those doors are closed upstairs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If those doors are closed, I'm super aware of that.
Yep.
I mean, I'm really aware. I'm just like, okay, like it's time for me to go up, like, and just, hey, you all right? Or it may just be like, hey, love you. I'm here if you ever want to talk or anything like that. Or if it's just like, hey, son, let's play some baseball. Or if I tell my daughter, let's watch a movie. Even if she tells me no, I still want them to know that I'm there.
You have just given an example of some of the most brilliant parenting anyone. This is, if anybody listens to anything in this podcast and they're a parent, I'm gonna drill into what you just said. There's so many things there. So first of all, you have a signal. You were aware when that door is closed.
Yeah.
You recognize the problem. Why that's important, most parents don't. They're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, down the road when something happens, they go, what did I miss? Well, they missed that. That's important. The most important thing is you got up off your ass and engaged with your child. You said, I've got to go say, hey, I love you. Or, hey, what's wrong? Or would you like to play some Xbox? Or would you like to watch a movie? Kids don't know how to communicate because they don't have our years of experience of doing it right and wrong.
Yeah.
We have to figure out that is such a delicate lesson. And they're not aware necessarily of the quality of that time or the quantity of that time. They're just aware of the time.
Exactly.
Mom, dad cares. They may not know how to communicate it or say, thanks, Dad. But somehow you're going to warm a place in their heart and they're going to know that they're loved. And this is not soft parenting. This is just freaking parenting.
Yeah. And it's a lot of the moments too of having discussions with my wife. It's a lot of the moments where there were some blow-ups. There were some, now when COVID happened, we're around each other a whole lot more. There's a whole lot more going on. Doesn't, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's just the awareness of, where's my humility at, right?
Yep.
I messed up here, but then like, how can I make it right, right? And there's one thing that I've always, well, not always, but I'd say maybe over the past 5 to 10 years that I've always did something very good. If I messed up, and I mess up more times than so, then I try and make it right. Listen, I was wrong for that. No excuses. I was wrong for that. I have to make it right. Like, that's one thing. And maybe that was just something that it's just been, it's been beaten to my head in the military. There's no excuses.
Right.
There's no excuses, right? When I'm standing in front of the company or in front of my platoon sergeant or the company commander, and he's asking me for my accountability for what happened and what I did, there isn't. It's just that listen, there is. Hopefully, there's a next time, and I'll make it right. Right? It's all that it is. There's no excuse. I will make it right. That's it. So, just kind of going back to that. Yeah, it's been really interesting, and there's been some really good growth as a dad, right? And I'm just trying to be aware more now, like where we are within, obviously the state our country is in, and even as how that kind of comes down into family life and parenting and sports and all this stuff that's going on, is that like, man, it's really important. Like you mentioned, that was, the dinner table. Those are important times. Even if there's
Oh,
not much being said, there's times when the TV is on, I just may be glancing back and forth at the TV, not saying much, right? There's a lot of times that my son will ask my wife, "What's wrong with dad?" Right? So, and that's okay because like I said before, I know who I am and I know who I'm not, and I know where my opportunities lie,
yeah.
right? And that's it.
I know where my opportunities lies. Another good tagline.
Seriously, yeah. I mean, because
We're gonna
and
write a book, Rich.
when I say opportunities, is that like I know where I'm at fault and where I have to try and make it right in certain parts. I mean, it's just like because what I mean by opportunity is that like it's not an issue. I don't say what's this issue over here. No, what's the opportunity over there?
Yeah.
It just sounds a little bit more positive, right?
Well, yeah, and my wife made it. She made it a process that when the kids got home or I got home, she put on old big band, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett type music in the background.
Yeah,
And then
that's awesome.
made it apparent. The kids didn't go up to the room and do homework. They did homework at the kitchen table around us, and they could ask questions. And we were all part of that process together. And she said, my kids will never disappear in their rooms. They will be with us. Now, there are times when they get older, right? They need some time, right? They need some time. Yeah. But when they were younger, she made it very clear that you will learn to communicate. You will be accountable to what you're doing, et cetera. I'd like to take full credit for that. I can't. I participated in it and benefited from it. But let's drill down into the most important part of the topic is I got to hear the story behind the tats.
Yeah. Well, so I think my first tattoo was at 18 or 19, and that was when I was in Virginia Beach. My sister took me. So after that, it was really kind of the ins and outs of, I think I got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tattoos, and they're spread out a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And each of them was at a different part of my journey in life. But that itch, I think it was, obviously been in the military before, and I was in from 2000 to 2007. Now everybody wants tattoos. Everybody's got them. There's sleeves. There's Instagram pages with tattoo guys. Like it's a thing now. Mm-hmm. But before I was around a lot of, around my guys in my platoon, and we would go out, we would get tattoos and stuff like that. So like I got that itch before, but now I'm getting it back. I'm at a different time in my life, and I've been able to build a skill set and trade that for another artist. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at a point in my life to where I'm like, okay, I forget that it hurts a little bit for a long period of time. So, some people's, can take pain a little bit more but it's a needle digging in your skin for long periods of time, and they're scraping it. Right. So like it hurts. It doesn't I don't care what anybody says. If you go a long period of time, it just hurts. But anyway, so I'm at a time now to where I'm just like, okay, this right arm is going to get done in increments, and I have to put it together. So it's been really cool to kind of research the types and kind of certain things that I'm looking for, to get that done. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a journey, and I'm looking for more now. Right. I'm looking to getting in the seat. So yeah.
So, Rich, it's interesting when I set this up, I had some ideas of things I wanted to talk about with you. And I got to tell you, the depth of your background and your personality and the lessons you learned that you've translated from your father into your livelihood, dude, I'm so excited to see what you're going to produce, because you have got so much to offer people. Most of the people that I put on the show, if I want to do another one, I know we've found something.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this again, right?
Yeah. I'm all for it. Yeah.
You got to see the next videos. I got to see if you've made people cry. I've got to see where your kids are at, all those things.
Yeah. So I'll be completely honest. When COVID happened, I went into anxiety and security mode. Mm-hmm. Being in the military, a couple of tours, it hit me really hard to where I didn't have any inspiration to produce really anything. I was working to produce for clients and giving all my energy for that, because it was a great distraction for me to not think so much about, civil unrest. And then obviously COVID, I didn't know what to think other than like, man, I don't want to go to downtown Raleigh. Right. I didn't want to go to all these places. And the only thing I know how to do is protect my family and protect myself.
Sure.
All I was trained to do. So then that was a switch that kicked on. And then it became a problem. And obviously my anxiety got a lot higher. And then now with all that happening, I said, okay, now I'm going to go run. I'm going to run a couple miles in this heat because I don't want to sit at home. I don't know what to do. My anxiety's building. Yep. So I just worked out more. Right. And that was my therapy. Working out was my therapy. So what I'm trying to get to is that it's coming back slowly now. Right now that I'm out shooting more, now that things got better, and now that I feel that I'm in a better place. Not that the world is in a better place, but I'm in a better place on how I've been able to really work through that, this transition that's been going on, and it's been good. So hearing you say that is just like, okay, now I'm going to get back to kind of producing more content for myself. Now I just reached out to a guy. I'm just like, listen, man, I need some BTS stuff. Like I want to get mic'd up. I want to talk about what's going on. And I even want to talk about how I felt and what I was going through, even if it's setting that camera up, looking in and saying, you know what? I had a problem during this time. My anxiety was high, my frustration, my anger, and I didn't know what to do because I put those scenarios in my head. If I'm at a gas station and somebody wants to try and pull me out of the car, it's not going to happen.
Right.
I feel like I almost see things sometimes before they happen, because when it happens, I'm not going to be the one that's caught up, right? So I don't want to get too much into that. That's just the military in me coming out. But it can be very good, but it can be very not so good at times. But I'm really looking forward to getting back in my groove of getting behind camera and really finding that narrative that can ultimately just help people through the anxiety that I had, through the anger that I had, but also help people through the motivation to just like, listen, when your feet hit the ground today, you've already won.
Yeah.
What else is there? What else is there? It's a constant reminder of everything that I battle with and everything that I'm successful at. Listen, it's okay. It's going to be okay,
So many nuggets there, Rich. The fact that when you were dealing with, as we all were, the anxiety and changing world of COVID, that you focused on exercise, right? You drilled into a good thing, right? Yeah. My oldest son graduated from state last year, played in the soccer team there, came back, and he said, Dad, I'm gonna take a 100% commission job in commercial real estate. I want to live at home for a year, save money to buy a house. And would you be okay with that? And he's a good kid, hardworking kid. I said, absolutely. Well, then COVID hit, right? So his whole job world got rocked. Yeah. But he said, hey, I'll work out with you. And I forget that he's, 30 years younger than me. Yeah. Rich, we went at it for about 3-4 months. I gained 10 pounds of muscle, and I felt like I got hit by a truck every day.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So I got to get back to some balance there as well for my life. I dove in real hard and still working 18-hour days, but that an hour and 15 minutes that we were exercising too, that was my therapy. It is critical for my mental, emotional, and creative process.
And I know that you'll relate to what I'm going to say. I've found that working out, it's not beneficial, and it doesn't work for me. Not working out of frustration or anger or anxiety or anything. It's more of finding the therapy, listening to your body, understanding your breathing. Like when I run, it's so peaceful. I don't like running at all, but I found the way for it to be peaceful. I focus on my breathing, right? Sometimes if I need to slow down a little bit, and if I'm in the shade and a gust of wind or like a breeze comes by, I'll close my eyes, and it's being present in the moment.
Yep.
That's what gets me by. That's what's helping me is being present, even in the times where I feel like I can't even breathe.
Yeah, you're right. It's me. Breathing is a big part of every exercise routine. Yeah. By the way, preventing injury, but also letting your body, getting in touch with what your body's going through. And to me, last night I had a long day, and I said to my wife, I'm going to go out in the garage and get my workout in. And I came in, I said, boy, it was so good to throw some weight around. It was just good to throw some weight around. It
really is.
Yeah. And you feel it for hours afterwards, which is part of the therapy.
Yeah.
Well, Rich, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I think it's been, you've exceeded. You're going to get people that are going to follow this and go, I want to find out more about that guy.
Yeah.
And I hope that happens, and we'll reach out and get you back in the program. But, thanks for eating some crow with us. It was probably one of the best 5-course meals we've had.
I appreciate it. This has been great. I've did a couple of these so far, and this is by far super exciting, super great. Blessed to be here on here with you.
Thanks, Rich. We'll be in touch. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks for checking out Eating Crow here on YouTube. Drop a like and subscribe so you never miss a video.